Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, host of Vancouver Island Time. Today I'm here on July 4th with Andrew Plank from... Andrew?
Hi, it's Andrew Plank from LePage. How's everybody doing today?
Good. So how was your past week?
It was okay. And you?
Good. I won a multiple offer for a client, so I'm very happy about that.
It's like winning the lottery.
Pardon?
It's like winning the lottery.
Well, not really. So we went in, we viewed 13 properties. They were from out of town. It was quite a quick decision. And then we decided on the one property. Turns out it went into multiple offers. There was another group watching us, waiting to see if another offer came in, and they had seen it a number of times, and they just decided to come in last minute again. And but we ended up winning, so very happy.
Good for you. Good for you and those out-of-town clients. It can be interesting working with out-of-town clients because they don't always know the local market. And I've been finding that when I'm working with people who have come in from one of the other centers, even in a center where there's property values are when they're lower property values, they tend to not really understand our values here and need a few rounds before they really get where prices are at.
Yeah. So, but you can sort of mitigate that by giving them information before they arrive.
Yeah. Here's what's sold and here's what's happening and here's what the strategies are that people are using these days.
Yeah.
I find people are still, though, hope springs eternal, and some people are still resistant. It's not a market for, we've talked about this before, but it's not always a market for people who are a little bit hesitant or unsure.
Yeah. So today we're going to go through what's been going on with the market in Victoria over the past 6 months, and we have a surprise. I actually have long-term data over the past number of years for different areas of the city, which we can go through in detail. But let me just get my keynote up here and get this on. Add to stream. Hold on one second. I will not be able to see you once this is going.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Oh, okay. All right. So today is July the 5th. Yeah. So net unconditional sales, 79 over the past 5 days. That's compared to 979 for the month of July in 2020. New listings are 78. So that's great. List to sale ratio.
Same ratio of listings to news to sales. Yeah. And
we're still low on numbers, less than 1,500 at 1,480. 1,369. Yeah. And last year, we were just starting to rebound from COVID. The 2 months really took our market down, and then they started to really pick up in July. And so we were at 2,653, and we're just about half of that right now.
For active listings, yeah, which is really low and historically low. And when we look at, I think you've got some graphs coming up that show the annual graph of active listings and sales over a year. So there's some interesting info in that. Also interesting in the Market Watch, where we've got less listings than pending. Normally, we've been seeing more listings coming up than properties going pending. But I think with the long weekend and the heat, perhaps maybe some people decided to hold off. Probably the long weekend is what caused people to wait. A lot of times that does happen. So we had less new listings, I think, than we would normally see. But 143 new listings versus 215 properties actually going pending. 27 price decreases, 4 price increases, and 584 sales closed the last week. And of course, that's because it was end of the month.
Right. So people often ask me, like, is it all right if I don't close the end of the month? I'm like, we'll just pick whatever day works for you.
Yeah, you end up actually, putting less pressure on your lawyers. You put less pressure on the movers. The reason people tend to close at the end of the month is generally because maybe there's a tenancy and you want to get in after the tenancy has been expired, or you're in a tenancy and you need to move in just before, you want to get in maybe just before the tenancy. So things tend to line up at the end of the month, but they don't have to. There's no reason at all.
Yeah, it's just a made up date.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you can read this, but this is more detailed data. So 428 units sold. That's less than 17.1% less than last month, 7.3% over last year.
That was for single family homes.
Yes, and this is over Greater Victoria with an average of $1,220,013. That's up 3.9% over last month and up 20.2% over last year.
Running.
But the median, remember we were talking about this price, the median is around $1,050,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that's up 3.9% from last month and up 21.3% from last year.
Right. So the median has raised more than the average, just slightly. Yeah.
And condos, 338 units sold. That's up 4% over last month, up 61.7% over last year. Remember last year we were talking about how condos were really behind, and that's because many people were trying to get out of closed spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Average price was $536,276. That's exactly the same as where it was last month, and up 11.1% over last year. And the median was $485,000. That's up 1.5% over last month and up 14.1% over last year.
Mm-hmm.
So townhouses, only 99 sold. That's less 21.4% over last month. It's 1% less than last year. The average is 723,000. That's
it's actually down. Yeah, almost 4% over last year. Last month, that is. But yeah, it's still up over last year.
And up 21.9% from last year with a median of 703,000. That's 3.7% over last year, but up 24.4% over last year, which is interesting to me.
Yep.
So
they've gone up. Townhouses went down last month, but they're still up 24.4% over last year, which is more than single family homes did in the last year. Yeah.
And then condos, I think that's because townhouses have been generally more affordable than housing has been, and it allows you to have your own yard and space.
Yeah, it's become the second choice, and it's actually the first choice when it's the only choice that's affordable to you. So it's interesting when you look at all areas or other areas. That's the second line below single family Greater Victoria. There's the second line says single family other areas. There are only 12 units sold, so the numbers don't really give us a lot, but there's if you look at the last versus last year, it's up 35.4%, and that kind of does suggest that people have been moving out of town and looking at some of the out of town values properties as putting pressure on that, because they just are so much better price point, and that has come up and sort of stable. It's closed the gap somewhat as we've seen last year as people have started moving out of town.
Yeah, and I don't usually sell these, but manufactured homes over last year have not done well.
No, not much at all.
4.3%.
Yeah, and in some ways you might look at that and say, oh, does that mean there's an opportunity in manufactured homes? But remember that you're buying a home on leased land. You're just really buying a structure, and that's all you really own. And you own a right to the lease that you have. And most of those leases are annual. Some are longer term than that. And there are some of the longer term leases that are not being renewed. And some of the mobile home parks are being developed. So you want to really be careful when looking at a manufactured home.
Some of them are month to month.
Pardon me?
Some of them are month to month, like the ones on Cooper and Craigflower.
Yeah. Now that being said, and let's just dive into this really quickly, but manufactured homes come in many flavors. And some are like that with, and they're all categorized under manufactured home. But you can buy a manufactured home at, for example, Summergate Village, and that's a bare land strata complex where you actually do own the land. And so that's a much better, more stable type of ownership and easier to get financing for, et cetera. You can buy into a co-op where you're one of the owners in the complex, and therefore you're part of the ownership and part of the decision-making process. So you actually benefit from that. But if you are buying a mobile home on regular leased land, it's problematic. And the others have problems too, but many less of them. So it's not apples to apples.
Right. And just saying the Summergate Village ones are worth more than double the price, even though they're the same structure, but because they're on their own land.
Correct.
Okay. So total active MLS listings, we can see since December, we have definitely come down. We're under the 1,600 mark. So not a lot of inventory.
No, if you look at past years where we have, in the middle of this graph shows the best example, we tend to see inventory ramp up from December on into the spring, and then generally peaks and then begins to go down again around June, July. And so you look at the 2019, you can see it's a downward trend, and then it hits the bottom in December 2019, goes up again, same June 2020, and now here we are in June 2021, it started to go down. I've been feeling like, we've been talking about how we're seeing oftentimes more listings than sales. So we might actually see a bump in inventory, but the trend is generally for inventory to go down over the summer.
Right. And especially right now with people going on vacation and everything opening up again, I can see there's going to be a tension away from real estate is my thought.
Yeah. If you're thinking of selling your home, you're living in that home. You don't want to be keeping it tidy and clean and having it open for showings when you're also trying to plan vacations or, come and go and enjoy your summertime and have the pool noodles out and all of that.
Okay. But that being said, if you do want to go away, it's actually the perfect time to sell, because then we can show your listing unfettered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then this is really interesting to me. So total MLS listings to total MLS sales. The listings are the bar graph and the sales are the line graph. And you can see that we've just had a very steady list to sale ratio over the past few months. And so even though the numbers have been high, the sales have been high as well.
Right. So they've kind of gone up and they've gone down in proportion. So they were rising up in January, February, March, April, and then they're coming down a bit, but the proportion remains the same. The number of listings versus sales are remaining, in a similar average. Yeah.
So around 80%, I would say. Okay. And then here is the ratio. So sales to active listings ratio. So you can see on the left side of this, from June 2019 to about February, March 2020, we were in actually a very balanced market. And then we moved rapidly into a seller's market, peaking in March of this year. And now we're heading back down a little bit, but still in a seller's market.
Absolutely. Very strong seller's market.
So this is just the home price index. And so June 2020 in North Saanich, we were hovering around 1.2 million. And we were talking about the financing earlier this year about how that being over 1 million means you have to have 20% down. And we have jumped up to 1,263,000 now, up 26%.
Doesn't seem to be stopping people. And when I have, people are, again, was using some examples of some of my clients who are from other areas and jurisdictions, and they're saying, how come prices are so high and how can they be so high? They can't go much higher. And then you look at centers like, Vancouver and Toronto, and they're so much higher than we are. So there's still room to grow. Doesn't mean that we're done here because we've reached the million point.
And I have a lot of clients right now who are coming from out of town who are like moving from Ontario and Alberta and places where I think that for them, COVID has not done very well. And so they want a change of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Sydney has also jumped up 26.2% from 706,000 to 891. And what we're looking at here really is kind of an ideal home. And they do a measurement based on like 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. And so this is kind of an idealistic number looking at trends, okay? So Central Saanich went from 787 to $1.6 million, again, just over that $1 million mark. And I think we were talking about how we were hovering around that, and now we've definitely surpassed it.
We've surpassed it. Now it's gone beyond.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was doing this. I'm at my cottage, so my technology was not the best last night. But we're Saanich East from 909 to $1,081,000, so up 18.9%, and
Right.
then Saanich West 789 up to 930, and that's up 17.8%. Do you want to take the other one?
Sure. Saanich West was on the left there. It's just not got a title above it. View Royal was at 802.9. It's got a 967, up 20.4%. Esquimalt has jumped 21.1% from an average of 697.3, which sounds just like nothing, to 844.7. And Vic West from 729.8 to 904.6 at 24% rise. That's one of the larger rises, the largest rise on this graph, or this, what do you call this? Anyway, Victoria went from June 2020, 865.1 to 999.7. Less of a jump, but it was already pretty tight up there, 15.6% rise. And Oak Bay has really seen a big rise as well, 1.2325, the average in last year, 1.498.6, 21.6% change in price.
So somebody was asking me the other day, they were saying, so there's nothing for sale in Oak Bay. How do we find something? And I said, well, that's one of the hottest markets in the city. So it generally, there in Victoria, if you look at a flame, it's hottest there and then it'll go out. And over the past year, I don't know about you, but I've been working a lot on the outskirts of Victoria as well as in the interior, and the reason for that is because it's been hot everywhere. So
we go where we're like, it's like fishing. We go where the fish are, and there's just no fish in Victoria Oak Bay. They've been caught so fast; they've been overfished. We have very little inventory, so if that's where you want to be, then you're going to be watching for that and ready to jump on it. But of course, with that much, as Jane referred to, heat on that market, it means that you will have to be pushing that much harder to win out in a bidding war, and there will be a bidding war.
Yeah. Okay, and then the West Shore. So reasonably priced houses, West Shore in Souk, 575,600 last year compared to 760. So it's gone up 32.1%.
Yep.
And the Highlands has gone up 30.4% from 976 to 1,272,500.
Yep.
And you want to take the others away?
Sure. Colwood went from 705,000 to 888,800. That's a 26% rise. Langford went from 691,100 to 838,600, 21.3% rise. Machosen went from a 966,300 to 1.233 million, 25% rise. You can really see the outlying areas have gone up a lot more than the core. Again, because those were the areas where there was a lot of in the core. There was a lot of attention on those homes. Once those homes became unaffordable, then people started looking further afield to places they hadn't been looking before, and they start to value them more because there's choice, and then so that tends to have more room for rise. I want to point out too, like some of those numbers that we were seeing, like Langford from 691.1 to 836.6, and Jane alluded to this earlier, this housing price index really does take, it's not an average house it's looking at here, it's looking at a representative house in the neighborhood. And so whatever was chosen as a representative house style some years ago, they kind of track what that kind of house might go up for in value. So a representative house in Langford is not the same as a representative house in Oak Bay or in Souk. And so these numbers are not kind of what you can expect on average to find. It's just what has happened over time for this representative house that they're using as an example. And we can pull that data from the HPI. It gets really complicated, but just so people know that you're not going to necessarily find, I mean, these current prices are actually, the current prices look about what I would say, but don't use it as an exact model. I think the median is a better, the medians and averages from the other graphs are better for referring to.
Yeah, we're just looking at trends here. And I wanted to say also, like, if you're looking at houses, like for instance, today I was just looking for a client, and in Colwood, I think we found 18 houses that meet their criteria, Colwood and Langford, and they're not in the $800,000 range. They are in the $1.1 million range. So the representative house is not what's showing up in some searches.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we just do this because there's different types of data. We don't want to narrow the information that we're providing people.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I wanted to just go into this. This is interesting. I found this in our, let me just find it, Statistics Digest here. So this is averages by area. So we can pick our exact areas and look at them.
Are you able to make that slide full screen?
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to share this. Okay, can you see that?
I can see historical prices for Colwood, yes. And
okay.
Average prices, yes.
Okay. So I just, this is interesting because twice a year they go through and look at what the different areas are doing. And so I thought this will show the trends really quickly. You can see Colwood did a little bit of a dip in 2019, and then it's rebounded up. And average prices have gone up to 1.1 million. Can you see that in the middle graph there?
Yeah. Yeah. Average prices are now at 1.1 million in Colwood for so far in 2021. So you could add that, you could imagine adding that to the graph above that shows the history over the years. Can we go back to that? Yeah, the historical average prices. So we'd be jumping up above the top of this graph for 2021. And what's interesting is actually this graph started off in 1990 at, looks like about 150,000. But let's round that down and say it was at 100,000. Then we're at 1 million now. We've gone up by, 10 times. We're 10 times the average price from 30 years ago.
Yeah, I remember when we bought our first house in Colwood, the seller said, wow, I was always wondering if we would ever get over $400,000. Mm-hmm. And we ended up, I think we paid $424,000. Mm-hmm. Anyway. Okay, Colwood, Central Saanich. So this is going by alphabetical. So Central Saanich, 20 years ago, average price was 200,000. Now they're up around 1 million.
How has Eve come before O, by the way, Jane?
I don't know.
Okay. Colwood, Central Saanich, alphabetical. Okay.
Whatever.
I know. I'm just a disturber.
Average prices, though, interesting. So they actually went over that graph. And what this means is, in terms of average, it means probably something really expensive sold in January of 2020 that kind of skewed that graph. So that's why they didn't show it on there. Okay, Esquimalt. I personally have a love affair with Esquimalt. I think it's so reasonably priced.
Mhm.
So the data here goes back to 1984, where they were around 60,000, and now the average price is just under 850.
Well, actually, if we go to 2021, we're actually at over $1 million.
Oh,
But
sorry, I'm looking at the top right. Yeah.
top right graph goes to the end of 2020 at 850, but we're so far at $1 million. So yeah, we've gone up quite a factor. You know, it's funny too, because people say, oh, you know, we've reached this price point of, let's go back and let's put yourself in the mindset of the person who back in 1984 was spending $60,000 on a, you know, on a home. And that was a 6 with 5 zeros after it, 4 zeros after it. And that's a lot of zeros for that time. And now we've got, you know, the 1 with 6 zeros after it for a lot of average prices and above. But these number of zeros is really, we look another 10 years into the future, or 20 years into the future, is the average price going to be, you know, 10 million, 100 million? Where do we, I guess what I'm saying is that don't get caught in the numbers where people say, you know, I don't want to pay this much for a home. It's way too much. If you'd paid $60,000, or let's say you paid $70,000 for that home in 1984, and the average price at the time was 60, you paid $10,000 more than you needed to, but it was the home you wanted. It was a great home for your family, and you've lived in it for 40 years. You're doing really well. And you probably don't regret that extra 10 grand back in the day. And I'm not suggesting you want to overpay for a home, but what I am suggesting is that valuing a home is really subjective, and that if you want to get into this home price, into the home property ladder, it's really important to do what you can when you can.
Well, I always say, you know, the best time to plant a tree is now. The best time to buy a house is now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just want to look at the trend here so you can see, like, there's a slight rise, steady, rise, steady, rise. So hopefully we're entering into a point right now where things may level off.
Mm-hmm. And you said steady, but there were some slight drops over time in those, but they're very slight compared to the rises, generally speaking.
Yeah, and you can see, so this is the Highlands. So we're now into H.
Yeah, really jumps around. That's quite a graph on the average price for the year of 2019 to 2021. But that's because, you know, you'll get one home sold in a month, and it might be a lower priced home, and then you get another home sold in another month, which is a really quite an acreage with a, you know, beautiful home and a 5-car garage. So it just really jumps around on averages.
Yeah, and that's because the quality of homes in the Highlands can really vary. So I've seen like a homemade home in the Highlands that I think I estimated it was around 700,000, and then I've seen beautiful mansions over, you know, $2 million.
Yeah.
So depends what's selling. But average prices will, again, you see this trend where things started to pick up in 2003, and they peaked in 2007, pretty steady till 2015, and then they rose again. Okay, Langford, this one's an interesting one because when I moved to Victoria in 1999, Langford was not well regarded, and they really turned a corner with their administration and their focus on development. And I would say around 2006, 2007, things really started to pick up for them. And they, specifically the Bear Mountain area, that really, there was a lot of cachet around living in Bear Mountain as a resort community, they call it, which is interesting. Anyway, so average prices there are 800,000, but this is not showing to me. When you're looking at average, you're not seeing the fact that there's a lot of lower income housing in Langford. There's a lot of kind of middle income housing, and there's a lot of high income housing.
It's
And
quite a mix.
it's quite a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happened, if you look at the graph in like 2002, 2003, that's when I was actually shopping for a home. And the prices in Victoria were going up and up and up, similar to what's been happening here recently. And people started to go, I can't afford in Victoria the house that I want. I've topped out on what I can actually buy. And I'll look a little further afield. We ended up buying in Langford in 2002. And we continue to watch the prices go up. And we're really glad we locked in when we did. But that's the same thing that's been happening here. And because Langford is now more of a center, we're seeing sort of Souk and Duncan and Mill Bay as being those areas now that people are starting to run out to, because they, even Langford has become unaffordable for some folks.
It's funny though, when you talk to somebody who's not from Victoria,
Mhm.
and they say, my friends say not to buy in Langford because it's so out of town. And with the advent of the
Mackenzie interchange.
Yeah, that just reduced the travel time by 15 minutes, which was, 30% of the travel time out there. So it's not that far.
No.
So this is where I live in Metchosin. Last year, when I was pricing a home, I was saying to my clients that the hot spot is really around just under $1 million, and it's true. So if you want to get a house sold quickly in Metchosin, price under $1 million, right now I think there's 5 listings for sale. They're all over $1 million.
Yeah, and when you look at your average prices for Metchosin, which have definitely jumped around a lot, and you can sort of see the graph historically has sort of centered around the $1 million price point. It's jumped up, it spiked up to 1.4 and then back down to $1 million, and then spiked up to 1.6 in February, March, and then down to about 1.2, and now it's spiked up above this graph, up above 1.8 from May, because I guess there were, there was some pretty big sales, including that one.
14 million.
Million, yeah. That will definitely skew an average.
So to me, North Saanich has really taken off. It's become very popular. It's similar to Metchosin in that it offers acreages. You can work from home. They're now they allow suites in accessory buildings over, I believe it's over 1 acre. And I think that rule may be changing to houses with less than 1 acre. So that'll increase the density there. But the value there is privacy. Often it comes with a view and you're close to the water.
Mm-hmm.
So
very, very wooded areas, very secluded yet accessible to centers like Sydney, Brentwood Bay. And there's some really wonderful areas out in North Saanich. Dean Park is considered North Saanich, although it's on the south side of Sydney. Some amazing views from there. Very popular area. And then if you go to true North Saanich, you're into the woods, many acreages, a lot more privacy. And as Jane alluded to, sometimes you get some really nice views as well.
Yeah. I sold my first home in multiple offers for $1.2 million in 2007.
Nice. Would be a beautiful home today.
It's gorgeous. And it's funny because the seller was like, how many homes have you sold in multiple offers, Jane? And I said, oh, none. And he goes, how many homes have you sold for 1.2 million? I went, oh, none. You're my first.
You're my first. Nice.
Okay, Oak Bay.
Look at Oak Bay. Wow.
So it peaked and then remained very steady in 2006. And then it took off again, I would say, in 2019. And here we are from 2019, just under 1.4 million to now we're over 2 million, I would say, probably coming up.
Yeah, that trend is going to continue upwards. If you take a line through that graph and sort of just, you can see where it's headed. Doesn't seem to be going down anytime soon. I do like to play a little mental game with pricing and say to folks, like, okay, Oak Bay, what is it you want to be there for? You're paying let's say you're paying $2 million for a home in Oak Bay. You can maybe get an equivalent home in, you probably can't get an
Bear Mountain.
Let's say Bear Mountain then, for 1.5 4 plus or minus. So there's a $600,000 difference. So I'll say, what if I paid you $600,000 to buy on Bear Mountain? You're saving that $600,000. Is that worth it to you? Is it worth for the extra commuter drive? What are you missing out on? You got to think about these things. But at the same time, if you want investment, Oak Bay has historically been a great place to park your money. That's for sure.
Well, it's interesting because I've had listings in Oak Bay, Broadmead, and Langford at the same time, all around the same price point, and I've seen the same buyers.
All coming through.
Yeah. All coming through those 3 areas.
Yeah. And Broadmead, we talked about Broadmead last week, and Broadmead is a great area to consider. I think it's actually more central than Oak Bay in some ways. It's very close to Cordova Bay beaches and so forth. Good parks, great shopping, and some really wonderful homes. Some of them need some updating, as we said. People have been living in them maybe since they bought them back in the 80s. But great value, and I think some better value than Oak Bay. But Oak Bay does still hold that cachet.
Yeah. So I just want to point this out because I had clients looking in Broadmead. So this is Saanich East, where Broadmead is. Mm-hmm. And in February, we could not get a place. Like every time we would go to write an offer, there were probably 20 offers. And you can see they really peaked in February. And then it's become more steady. I had a client, we were looking in January, another client for houses less than $1 million. We could not find anything. And this data all supports it that, the average price is over 1.25 and it's settled down, I guess, in March and has remained fairly steady. But the same house I was looking for in January, I found 10 of them in April.
Right.
And we actually won in multiple offers and there was only one other person. So the market has cooled down a bit.
Yeah. And, there's micro markets, and I made that fishing illusion earlier, but, you'll find sometimes that one area might not have a lot of listings. It's just happens to be that nobody's decided to list at that time. And when you've got a buyer for that area and they're competing against other buyers, there's more buyers, let's say, than the properties. Then of course you're going to see more pricing pressure and more competition. And then just on the law of averages, more listings come up. Maybe those buyers have bought and moved on, completely inverts. And it can just be these little micro markets in time. I often coach my clients to be patient and wait. Yes, the market's rising. Yes, there's a lot of pressure. Yes, you shouldn't. You should still go in when the right property comes along. But at the same time,
be smart.
Be smart. Yeah. Yeah.
So Saanich West has typically larger lots. It goes from the west side of the highway out to the coast and actually not out to the coast, out to the Highlands and central Saanich.
It includes areas like the Gorge. It includes areas like the Blanket interurban area, Prospect Lake. It includes like the Glanford area. Anything, west of the Pat Bay Highway, as far down as the Gorge, and it's kind of out towards where central Saanich starts, so past Elk and Beaver Lake.
So to me, this is one of the properties is kind of missed because I find people look Fairfield, Oak Bay, then they go up Saanich East, Cordova Bay, and up to central Saanich, and on the left side of the highway, which is Saanich West, it tends to get skipped over. There are some areas that are super nice. I just sold one a couple weeks ago on Hearst Avenue, and that was a 2-bedroom home with a garage, and we got it for $800,000.
Nice. Yeah, definitely. I find that the Glanford area tends to be a little bit less pricey than some of the other areas. I think Royal Oak is a great area. And some really wonderful homes. And then again, you can get out into the more rural areas, and compared to the Chosen or the Highlands, I think Saanich West has some just beautiful homes, a lot of great horse properties, a lot of sort of not ranch exactly, but farmish areas in the woods more. along the lakes. Prospect Lake is an underrated, valued lake. So there's some, if you're looking for long-term, I know, long-term, Jane just did a little shh. If you're looking for long-term value, that is an area that is in the center of the other centers that has yet to develop. And it probably won't ever develop as a big center because of zoning and lot size requirements, but it is a great place if you want a large lot, treed, and still be close to town.
Yeah, excellent area. So it has been going up and down, but not to the extent as other areas. And we're hovering around $1 million there. And it's coming down from a high in November and January of this year of 1.2. Okay. So, and then Sydney, we're getting near to the end here. It's also following that trend of increase and then flat, increase and then flat, and then it's increased again. Its historical price went up to $900,000 in 2020, and now it's up around 1.3, and that's due, I think, to waterfront sales.
Yeah, there's a lot of great properties that are coming up in Sydney. There's been a lot of development in Sydney, redevelopment of older homes, some infill, some condo builds, although this isn't what we're talking about here. Sydney's really starting to take off. I highly recommend Sydney to anyone who's looking for a beautiful area, especially if you're looking for a retirement area. Sydney's amazing lifestyle. And if you love boating, lots of great marinas around.
And you're very protected there for boating, as well as if you want to just go, there's lots of provincial parks in the Gulf Islands just north of there. It's super easy also to commute to Vancouver from that area.
Yeah.
Okay, and Souk. So we went from $100,000 in 1989. So you could have bought in Esquimalt or in Souk. And now the prices here are just under $700,000 in 2020 with the upper historical graph, and around $800,000 with the middle graph here.
Yeah.
And to me, Souk has a lot to offer. I used to teach in Souk. It's definitely changed a lot. I would say the typical person living there now commutes into the city. It's a bit of a bedroom community. It used to be its kind of own animal.
Yeah.
I really like it out there. You get gorgeous views. Yeah,
and there's, East Souk, I think, I've always felt is undervalued for some of the waterfront along East Souk. And then Souk itself is developing up, and the road, I know they're doing a lot of work along the roads along there, and a lot of developments coming in. So look for Souk in about another, 10 years to become a real center of its own. Great recreation from there if you want to go fishing. Get off to camping off in Port Renfrew, or fishing in Port Renfrew, or any of the more recreational adventures that you can do. So that's a great little retirement community, especially if you're coming from one of the centers where you can't afford to be in Victoria, but you have family in Victoria, you want to be close to the medical that Victoria has to offer, but can't afford it. Come live in Souk. It's a great little option, and it's really developing up.
Okay, and then last but not least, Victoria and Vic West. So it has been steadily rising. I think also Victoria West, or Vic West as we call it, is one of those areas that's being missed out on. It's within walking distance to downtown Victoria. June 2019, it was averaging around 900,000 for both those areas, and it's gone up to 1.2. This really is dependent on where you're looking. Again, you were talking about those little micro markets. Definitely Victoria and Vic West are examples of that. So you could be in Jubilee, which is right beside Oak Bay, and you're going to pay $100,000 less and essentially live in the same area. And Vic West, you can get a character home right on the water. You can, there's a Selkirk bike trail, there's Bamfield Park, and then there's smaller character homes, which I think a lot of them have not always been the best
Cared for.
care for, but they are transitioning. And there was that development on Wilson, those townhouses, which have done really well.
So I think, I challenge anyone, if you just took someone and dropped them on Selkirk Road, during the season when everything's bloomed, and they would think that they are somewhere, Bay or somewhere else. It's a beautiful little street, one of my favorite streets in Victoria. It's just right off the water there on the Gorge Inlet. There's amazing value to be had in Vic West, and people are starting. Now I know, again, people are starting to notice, but that's where your realtor comes in. Is what is it? We're going to ask those questions. What is it you're looking for? What is it you want long term? What kind of lifestyle do you want? But consider these places that maybe aren't on the radar. I've got to say, in this day and age, everything is on the radar for everyone because of limited choice. So it's not as easy to find these little hidden gems. But when there's a lot of selection on the marketplace and people are sort of overlooking some of these areas, I think it's really worth considering them.
Yeah. So I see a comment here. Let me just see. Is airport noise a problem in Sydney? Depends on where you are. If you're on the southern end of Sydney, you can be under the line of.
Yeah, you want to look at where they're where the most common. Look at the airport, and you'll see where there's Dennis's question. You'll see where the landing strips are and where they run. So you're going to see where the planes are coming in on. But you'll still get small planes, but the big planes are going to be coming in on that big landing path. And that's not just Sydney. That's going to be across North Saanich in different areas, coming and going. I haven't heard many people who really, really complain about it. But if you are truly on one of those paths, you want to be careful.
Actually, I have a funny story. So one of my very first houses that I sold, we were up in North Saanich, and we're just north and west of the airport. And this is in 2006. I didn't really know where I was. And we're sitting in the backyard, and this plane goes, whoa,
right over top.
Backyard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, by the way, we're right beside the airport.
Yes.
And luckily the buyer's like, I love planes. Phew. Yeah.
Well, so yes, there can be airplane noise. You'll get anywhere in the city. I find you get noise. I'm living near Hillside Mall, Cedar Hill. I can hear the helicopter coming and going to the airport, to the hospital. You got some planes flying overhead. You've got road noise anywhere in the city, really. I challenge you to find a place in the city where you're not going to get some road noise from the distance.
Well, I live in Metchosin, and I'm in the middle of nowhere, but it just so happens that east of us is Albert Head, and just on the water there is where they do all their helicopter exercises. Yeah. So sometimes I'm in the hot tub.
Right. Yeah, there you go. So no privacy, no complete being without noise anywhere in the city, but of course you're going to be louder under the airport for sure.
Okay, so I thought of a topic for next week, by the way. Great overview of the market. So I thought we could talk about leaseholds because I'm getting a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm getting a lot of questions because the prices are lower, but I just want to talk about the pros and cons of buying in a leasehold, what that means for you, what that means for your family if you happen to pass away.
Yeah.
And do you have any thoughts about that?
Absolutely. That's great. I've got a client who owns a leasehold, and he's been talking about wanting to sell it, but at the same time, not sure. And, it brings him great income because he's using it as a rental. It's got, I think, 20 years left on the lease. And there's some argument around, how much is this worth at the end of the day as an investment? Because with a leasehold, we'll talk about this, they get worth less and less as time goes on if you have a fixed term lease.
Yeah, unless they decide what I don't even know what happens at the end of a lease.
I've done
Maybe.
research into it, and it's really up in the open. And obviously, it's up to the owner of the property what they do, and of course, they're going to negotiate something that makes sense for them and is profitable for them.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should find a lawyer who can talk to us about this next week. I'll look for that.
Okay, sounds good, Jane. Thank you.
All right, you guys, thanks so much for joining us this week. If just remembered, if you're interested, please subscribe. We are on YouTube and you can follow us there. We're also on social media on Facebook, and we are happy to answer your questions. So if you have any, please email us. Let's just find out, Andrew, how do people get in touch with you?
You can reach me, cell phone, you can call or text. I'm at 250-360-6106, or email me info@andrewplank.com. Check out my website, andrewplank.com.
Okay, and you can reach me. My name is Jane Johnston. I'm with the Briar Hill Group at RE/MAX Camosun. My number is 250-744-0775. You can reach me at briarhillgroup@gmail.com. And there are two websites if you're considering moving to Victoria. One is vancouverislandtime.com and the other is briarhillgroup.com. All right, everybody, have a great week. And thank you so much for joining us. From Shawnigan Lake, this is Jane. I am taking the day off.
Excellent. Okay, from Summit Hill, it's Andrew Plank.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy your day off, Jane.
Thanks.